From beautiful downtown Sacramento, it's time for Beach Blanket Fort Bingo.
Beach Blanket Fort Bingo. Beach Blanket Fort Bingo. Fort Bingo. Spazzy's got a show when you really want to know what's going on. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Beach Blanket Fort Bingo. Fort Bingo. Art and music, golden blue, and your favorite comics too. Grab a spot and settle in, 'cause it's high time we begin. Beach Blanket Fort Bingo Podcast. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Hello and welcome to Beach Blanket Fort Bingo. I'm your host, Steve Schnee, and we've got another great show for you. Unfortunately, my regular co-host, Ronnie Barnett, is currently on assignment, but right now I'd like to introduce you to my two very special guests. Both of these gentlemen came to prominence in the early 1980s as two-thirds of the British pop soul band, the Kane Gang, with songs like Gun Law, Closest Thing to Heaven, Small Town Creed, Motortown, and their cover of the Staple Singers' Respect Yourself. The group's sophisticated sound wowed audiences all over the world. However, after only two albums, the Kane Gang split up and the members went their separate ways. But here we are, 32 years later, and Paul and David had reunited and have just released Infinity Drive, their debut album as AUTOLEISURELAnd. And believe me, folks, this is one of the best albums of the year, blending pop, soul, electro-pop, and jazz together in an irresistible mix. Infinity Drive is the sound of summer 2023. And now it is an honor to introduce you all to Paul Woods and David Brewis. Welcome to the Blanket Fort, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Hiya.
Great to be here.
Before we talk about this new album, let's go all the way back to the beginning. How did the two of you meet?
Well, I think it was in a pub when we were in our kind of late teens, and we found out we were interested in the same kinds of music. There was a buzz going around our town, you know, with different bands and things, and we got together a few times over the next couple of years. And then by the turn of the 80s, we decided we'd been in a band with like 5 members, and then the drummer dropped out and the bass player dropped out, and it just left the 3 of us. We thought, you know, what the heck, let's just make some records and see what we can do.
Your first single came out in 1983. You know, the music of the Kane Gang was far more sophisticated than a lot of your contemporaries. You know, with most bands, it was pretty obvious to see or to hear who their influences were. You know, you could tell if a band was influenced by Bowie. You could tell if a band was influenced by the Beatles. But there was so much going on with the Kane Gang that it was difficult to pinpoint any direct inspiration. What artist influenced you guys?
Oh, blimey, nearly everything. Steely Dan, obviously. Doobie Brothers, that side of things. Then you got Elvis Costello, Bruce Springsteen,
Daryl Hall, John Oates.
Yeah. Todd Rundgren. Who else?
Well, and then the contemporary bands that were coming through, some of them were just like one-hit wonders, but then you had the big stuff like Frankie Goes to Hollywood, but that was like kind of after we'd established and recorded. But anything that was going on, we listened to all of it, you know?
Yeah, we also, and Dave's a big Burt Bacharach fan, and we're both big Jimmy Webb fans. So the songwriting sort of came from there as well.
I think one key thing from my part of the triangle that we were writing in was that I'd been to music college for 3 years as a kind of least worst option of after school pre-job things to do. I couldn't get in anywhere else, and I learned such a lot. It was a largely jazz and pop course, and it like taught me how things work. They would dissect Stevie Wonder songs and Beach Boys and things like that. And I thought, wow, I like this, you know. So that gave me a bit of a push into being able to understand how to write, or what tools it doesn't give you the inspiration, but it helps you with the tools that you need to get the job done, you know.
Yeah, Dave was also playing big bands. Guitar.
I got recruited.
Got a good story here.
I got recruited on my 20th birthday the bass player had dropped out of a big, like what an old-fashioned big band that was doing dances. There was a huge scene for that with the older crowd at the time, and I turned up with my bass and my amp, and basically the band, the rhythm section of the band, the heart of the band was Sting's old band called Last Exit. It was the same drummer, the same sax player, the same guitar player. It wasn't the keyboard player, but I did work with him later. But I kind of thought, well, I just got a call an hour ago and I'm sitting in the middle of Sting's band and he's already in the charts with the Police's first record. And I thought,
Yeah,
this is a good call, you know, that was a good one to get.
Yeah.
now for audiences, by the way, David is the gentleman on the left and Paul is the gentleman on the right.
Yeah.
But, you know, with the Kane Gang, lead vocals in the band were handled by Paul and Martin. Did you have to fight for who would sing what songs, or were certain parts of the songs written specifically for each vocalist?
I think both, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, we never fought for anything. We just sort of.
It developed into what it was. I mean, if someone started the song, they'd probably have the first line and be able to sing it. But as it developed, we found that introducing a second voice just a little way into the song just lifts it.
Yeah, usually I'd probably be the one that started with having a sort of softer voice and a more sort of get into it a little bit more. Then the more raucous voice would appear later, and that would be Martin.
Mhm.
I think Dave, you sort of very early on sort of wrote for us like that.
Yeah.
You know.
I always thought it was more interesting because a lot of the bands that I used to listen to had more than one lead singer.
Yeah.
It seemed like, although we were never a harmony band, the guys didn't sing harmony together. It was two really different voices that just kept the interest and kept the focus, and it just worked. It really just worked for us, especially on something like Motortown. If it was just one of the guys singing it, it wouldn't have been the same record for sure, you know.
Once a while I say it's Papa, 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 yeah. Papa, 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 yeah. We're all talking about the small town creed. We're gonna tell you what we believe. It's a gumball machine and 7 miles.
We quickly learned how to interplay, didn't we?
Yeah.
And we trade off each other and very easily.
Mhm.
And we did a line and we knew which one was going to sing it, you know. It seemed very natural like that.
Yeah, when we did Small Town Creed live, I've got about 5 or 6 different recordings of that. It was never the same twice. It was never the same as the record. It was like this kind of ad-lib, chaotic party thing going on. And 5 minutes later, we'd have to kind of all look around and think, should we end it now or does it keep going? And we could do it as an encore, even if we played it earlier in the show, and it would be a completely different thing. It was fantastic to be, just because of the two voices making things up, just ad-libbing and going for playing off each other. If somebody did something, somebody else would try it. You know, the other one would try and like interplay with that and make it better. And you know, it was fantastic. We thought it was almost like a gospel-y thing. It's kind of brought everyone together in the audience, that kind of feel, you know.
Now, what was the musical climate like, you know, when the band started? Did the 80s feel like the Wild West, where you could take the music anywhere you wanted? Or did you guys feel constrained by what was going on?
It seemed to me like the charts at the turn of the 80s had kind of rebooted, and it was like the start of the 60s. There was a new thing starting, and it was very fresh, and everything was open to younger bands coming in with new ideas, and it was very competitive. And we would listen to what the journalists would say was the best thing and try and do something better than that. And just it made us up our game all the time.
Also because of having synths and rhythm machines and everything being readily available. We sort of learned production, didn't it?
We did, we learned as we went.
So
we got one keyboard, and then we start adding that into things, and a drum machine. We thought, oh, we like this, but we also like our drummer, so we'll do a bit of both. And it was interesting to have a completely open field. We didn't have to work within one genre. We could do kind of anything we wanted.
Yeah, I think the focus was on well, improving production skills, and I think that shows on the records by our contemporaries. You know, that we quickly learned, like the Blue Nile, people like that, the Associates.
Yeah.
Their production, you know, was very sophisticated. From what was happening, say, in the 60s, when people just turn up, plug in, play the live set, you know, we were actually making, it really felt as though we were making records rather than
just capturing an event.
The music itself.
It was, we listened to Trevor Horn's early stuff, who is somebody I always followed as a producer right from when he started in a band called The Killers. And we did some stuff. Not The Killers.
Oh, no, that, but
Killer on the Dance Floor by The Killers. I've got that. I've got a copy of that.
Killers on the dance floor.
Yeah, it's not very good, but they certainly
Murder on the dance floor.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and the stuff he did for a duo called Dollar, I love the sound of that. And then ABC. But I just thought if you're going to aim for something, and he was obviously aiming for something high, let's go that way rather than just do guitar, bass, drums, keyboard thing. Let's make a thing out of it. You know, make a record out of it, not just capture a song. Because a lot of bands sounded like they were just doing it, like the Smiths sounded like they were doing it live, but there's a lot more went into their productions than is first perceived. You know, there's a lot of guitars doubled for sound and things like that, and they were very careful about it. Which is why their records sound really good. But we didn't want to go down that route. To sort of simulate a great band, we wanted to make a great record, which is a completely different thing.
Yeah, but we're going to have a band anyway.
We lost our original rhythm section, and
there was only three of us.
There was only three of us. We got a great drummer called Graham, who was I used to work with, and he ended up with Prefab Sprout for a year, and he did their first album, which I produced, and then he left the music scene because really at that time it was still early days, and he wanted to do something. More profitable. More profitable, yeah. Drummers didn't get the lion's share of anything in those days, you know.
Well, you guys were signed to Kitchenware, and David, you started producing bands for the label like Martin Stevenson and the Dainties. And of course, as we just mentioned, Prefab Sprout. How did that come about?
It was a simple thing. We'd already been in the studio to record Brother Brother. And it turned out pretty well. And I've kind of put the arrangement together for it and oversaw that. I think we all produced it, but I think Prefab Sprout liked it and said to Keith Armstrong at Kitchenware, can we get Dave to do it? Because they didn't want to do it on their own, and they couldn't afford a professional producer as such, because they had zero budget really to record a whole album. And so I jumped at that because the new songs that they were doing at the time were just incredible. And I thought, who would ever say no to that,
We'd sort of known this.
We'd known them for a couple of years. In fact, I've got a poster for one of them. I'm going to show you it from one of their very earliest gigs from a pub in Durham. I'll just get that.
Yeah, we cottoned on. They had a residency at a pub in Durham, and we started following them, watching them every week. And they were doing like 2.5 hour sets,
Holy cow!
That's written in crayon by Paddy McAloon himself.
Wow.
The Brewers Arms in about probably 1981, early 81, something like that.
That's incredible.
Yeah, he did a few. I used to work in a guitar shop, and they used to come in and stick these on the wall. And when the gig was finished, I
sang along. I
sang along until I was forcibly restrained. It says, it's a quote from somebody. I took it. They were going to. The shop was going to throw these things out, so I took.
Paulette. No, can't read.
Yeah.
Can't read.
I've got a couple of those. They're quite funny.
Could you tell early on that this was an entirely unique band?
Yeah, we all went to see them at an open air thing. Did you go to the
No,
Dome
I
Fest?
didn't.
Me and Martin Brammer went to this thing called the Dome Fest, which was an outdoor gig in Durham one summer, and I said to the engineer who I knew, who's on next, and he said, Prefab Sprout. I said to Martin, who are they? I said, we could have been on. And then they came on, and after about 30 seconds, we looked at each other and thought, crikey, you know, this is a band. And that was just one song. But then we went to see them at this other gig that they did every 2 weeks. And they did 2 one-hour sets every time. And the songs are so dense and full of information and all different. I used to record them. I took a little stereo recorder along and recorded them one week. And I think that was the start of just being interested in each song, and that helped with the production thing as well. You know, we just knew they were a good band. It took a few.
That was before Wendy was in. It was
just a 3-piece.
It was 3-piece.
Okay.
Paddy Martin and a guy called Big Salmon, wasn't it?
Mick Salmon on drums, and then he made a decision to leave just after the Kitchenware thing started. Mick, the drummer, and he was really good. He used to do backing vocals, and he was a good little drummer, but he was like a kind of jazzy feeling thing. And then because we weren't doing so much work, they said, could we borrow Graham from you guys? Because we were only doing studio things now and again, and not really much, not many gigs to speak of. We did a couple, and we said, yeah, sure. And that's when it really came alive, because Graham just kickstarted the whole thing. It was like putting a V8 engine in the back of it, you know, really different thing. And that's at the point when Keith said, would you be interested in making an album with them, you know? So I thought, well, I've been listening to all kinds of stuff from the previous 10 years of different productions of things, and I thought there's a lot of ideas.
Well, you can handle it all.
I know the references for a lot of these things, and I can help with arrangements a little bit because I'd studied that, and just help the thing along. I mean, it was recorded on an incredibly, in the Kane Gang, we would remix a single for more money than it cost to record that entire album, you know. It was just a lot of. It took about a month off and on little sessions, but it was just a lot of work getting everything in place. I really enjoyed it, but I was absolutely wiped out by the end of it. I was so tired.
This could be the closest thing to heaven I have ever known. I've ever known.
You were working as a producer, you know, for these other bands while putting together the first Kane Gang album, which was called The Bad and Low Down World of the Kane Gang. Was it difficult to balance those two things?
It was tiring, but it was two separate, completely two separate jobs. In that I was a writer and performer with the Kane Gang, and fully into that. And it was nothing. There was none of that in PREFAB SPROUT. All I was doing was a kind of overseeing job, if you like, you know, because some producers just sit and let the engineer do it. I was a little bit more than that, but it wasn't my art, if you know what I mean. Where the Kane Gang, I mean, that first album, the Kane Gang first album, is my favorite thing that I've ever done. I think it's considering it was our first album, and it wasn't even an album when we started it. It was a single and then another single, and then by the time we had 6 tracks, we said, well, can we not just finish an album? And as a complete body of work, I really love that, and I think it's better than. I don't think it's better. I think I like it more than anything else I've ever done.
Right.
And for a lot of different reasons, you know, because Martin and I had been close since we were at school at age 11, and we went all that way together, kind of battling through this and that, to get something going in music and to actually make an album. That was quite an achievement for us.
To actually get in the recording studio then
just to do it
was a big step. It was a major thing.
And you know, we've known Paul, you know, from 5 years on from that meeting, and we all just clicked together that we knew exactly what we wanted to do, and but we didn't know quite how to do it.
So I never really interfered with the Kane Gang schedule.
No, I used to get called out to do things, you know, like I had to do a video for PREFAB SPROUT once, and it interfered with an interview that the guys were doing. But they you know, two guys can do an interview, so it wasn't a big deal.
It's not a bad thing.
I would never have missed a studio session for another band. Absolutely not. and I would
Yeah.
never have missed a writing session for another band.
No,
There's no chance.
we never gigged though. We didn't gig much. So,
But bear in mind, at the
not
same
being a
time,
writing band.
as the early Kane Gang, I was still in this dance band. I was still doing weekends. So I was.
I don't know where your head would be at, really, playing waltzes and jazz and.
I went to sleep one gig
Foxtrot.
playing Moon River.
I'm not surprised.
The last song of the night. The drummer had poked me with a stick in the ribs. I was so close.
If you don't respect yourself, ain't nobody gonna give a good cahoot. Respect yourself. Respect yourself. Respect yourself.
Usually when I bring up the Kane Gang, especially for some like British and Irish folks, the first thing they mention is your cover of Respect Yourself. Of course, such a classic, but was it difficult to cover this classic, or at that time, did you have enough confidence and bravado to do anything?
We weren't going to actually do it. We decided as a little tribute to soul music and what we were into that we'd always do it. Well, we were going to do a cover, and we'll try and do a cover on every album.
With Respect Yourself, it's largely groove driven, and it's got a good sing-along chorus. I don't think without Pete Wingfield, who was our co-producer, it would have worked. But he got it happening. He got the right groove going in the recording, and
Keyboards, yeah.
and the backing singing's phenomenal and all that. You know, it's really he really did a
We
good
sort
job.
of, when we thought, right, we're going to do this, and then as we got into it, we realised there wasn't really a tune.
It's not so much a song that you could write down. It's a record, and you've got to kind of go with that and try.
And
and
obviously, being a family,
Yeah.
the harmonies didn't exist. You know,
Yeah.
you just think, where are they? So and gospel as well. It was hard. So it was a bit of a difficult one.
It was a
wasn't it?
difficult one, but Pete pulled it together for us, and it was always popular live. So it ended up being a really good choice, and it charted pretty well.
We know how David feels about it. Paul, were you happy with the way the album turned out? Are you happy with the Bad and Low Down World of the Kane Gang?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, you know, when we actually recorded them, we did demos of them, and it's always the same when you go into a studio and you do your first fully fledged recordings, and the sound,
You hear it coming back polished.
you hear it coming back polished, and you get very unsure. You know, you think, is that too smooth for where we were going?
Yeah, we had no experience.
And then, you know, we play them to various members of your family or your friends, and some people say, oh, I like the demo a bit better than that, you know, because they weren't used to it coming out so big, smooth, polished, bigger production, really. And there was no really rough around the edges stuff, especially on Closest Thing.
Everybody's glory bound, got it played in Motortown. Spread the news all around. The work band is in Motortown. There's a new age dawning.
This came out 2 years later in 1987. It seemed to get more attention here in the U.S. than the debut because it was on Capitol Records. Now, were you surprised when Motortown actually gained some traction and made it into the top 40?
Well, Capitol were always a really positive force.
We knew that they were going to
really try
It was
hard
going to
with it.
work, you know.
And we were just in that early kind of MTV period where we made sure that the video was appropriate for the song and it was going to appeal to people. But I think it's largely down to Capitol, but the DJs certainly got a hold of it, because my friend Phil, who lived up in Chicago at the time, he said he'd been driving to Detroit and around the kind of Midwest. He says, every radio station's playing your record. I can't believe it. So it wasn't just like a kind of TV hype or anything like that. People actually were really playing that song.
Yeah, you could tell by the enthusiasm, because we came from. It was really funny because I was watching your Bluebells interview,
Uh-huh.
and they were quite happy with London Records. We were the opposite.
Yeah, we preferred Capital's
Yeah,
enthusiasm.
Capital was so much
They were
more pro Kane Gang than London Records were.
Yeah.
And so like we just felt at home there, and everybody was really enthusiastic, and we thought, oh, I mean, it was still a surprise when it was a.
Oh yeah, we were couldn't
Yeah.
believe it. We were
When
on
it was
TV
successful.
with Joe Cocker and all kinds of people, you know,
So it was a bit of a shock.
doing US TV shows that we'd only dreamt about, you know. Amazing. We almost did a tour, but it just
It's
didn't.
really
quite
weird. It's really weird because we had this conversation a couple of months ago, and you know, it's a long time ago now, and you sort of lose, you know, you'll get something coming into your mind once every so often, and mine was, weren't we on what do they call it?
Soul Train.
Soul Train.
That was solid gold. I looked it up.
Was it?
Yeah.
Oh, right. What was in Soul Train? And like we're convinced we're on Soul
Yeah,
Train.
we're convinced we're on Soul
And so-
Train. But that's the thing, when you watch videos of yourself, you forget what it was like being there in person, and you just remember the video, you remember the image of yourself. So it's kind of
It was
hard to
weird.
remember and being
And
on
so
the
like I
shows.
went through, and you can get things on the website now. You look through every episode, you know. So I did that. Hold on, we did it. I'm not going. That's it. But I think what it was, we were in the
Same
church,
studios.
in the same studios,
Yeah.
and all the Soul Train dances and the acts were around.
It's a
you
really
know.
similar
So I think-
arrangement.
I
Yeah.
Yeah.
think that was
We did tons of TV around Europe as well for the singles.
Mhm.
Almost going to be a US tour when various headline acts were being suggested, and we were going to be second or third on the bill.
Yeah.
And it was, by the time, I hate to say it, but London Records, by the time we put a budget together for the musicians that we needed, they weren't really willing to support it. They said maybe next time around, and then they kind of lost interest. But I think that would have really made us more in the States.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would have been a lot of work.
We
Yeah.
knew that.
Speaking of the States, you know, the album cover was changed for the US version. They added a edited version of Closest Thing to Heaven to the track mix. Did
Yeah.
you guys need to approve that, or did you find out after it was released?
We did it.
No.
We
Oh.
did it with Pete. Pete Wingfield came in and we jazzed it up a bit to make it sound more like Miracle. And I still prefer the original album version, but it was necessary for that album. And we needed another song on it for the States. We really did.
Well, just knew that, you know, it was our best song, and nobody in America had really heard it. you
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
Yeah.
Or, you know, give
We
me-
needed to have people listen to it, so that was the best thing to do. But yeah, we were well up for that.
Yeah. Everything Capital did was right. wasn't
Yeah,
it? You know,
they were good in charge, being in charge of all kinds of promotion and videos. They had us on the phone for 2 solid days. We had a room each, and we had to phone all these DJs right around the United States,
Oh,
which was actually mind-numbing and mind-blowing. We forgot who we were by the end of it. It was just so.
it was really weird. It was the most surreal thing because I think it was one guy they're all independent record shops, and you know, we saying, "Hi, it's Paul A from the Kane Gang," and you know, we just saying, you know, you're stocking our record and it's great, and we just want to know how it's doing, and have you heard it, and da-di-da, and
Yeah.
cheer 'em up, you know. But we weren't particularly very good at that, so we
No.
bring some people up, and obviously they must get these calls from every record company in America, from all these acts. It's a wonder they do any work. So
Yeah.
like you get exasperated owners of these small record shops with about 10 people waiting to be served while we're talking to them. They're going, "What do you want? What do you want?"
You see,
So, like,
I remember working retail and wholesale when stuff like that would happen. You guys, unfortunately, never called me. But I did get a call from the drummer from Flock of Seagulls. So So almost. Another song on the album that got a lot of attention was your cover of Dennis Edwards' "Don't Look Any Further," which I believe reached #1 in like Billboard's dance charts or club charts. What inspired that cover?
It was the same logic as the first album. We wanted to do a soul cover, but we didn't want to do a 60s song. But we did like Dennis Edwards from his Temptations things. And that had just been a US hit, but it hadn't really clicked in the UK, did it?
I think
it was played in the clubs a bit, but we thought, that would be a good one to do.
It was a great groove, wasn't it?
Yeah. It was that kind of synthesized bass groove thing that everybody was doing at the time with electronic drums and that.
Yeah.
And we thought, that's a good. So we give it a go, and it worked really well. Yeah, and the clubs did like it, and it was I saw it shooting up the Billboard charts, and I thought, wow, we're like #3 or something in the club play. And then one week it was #1. I couldn't believe it. We're ahead of everybody.
You've got that in your downstairs WC.
Yeah, my downstairs bathroom, the little offshoot. I've got the page from the Billboard just to remind me.
You know, the band was gaining traction in the States. And in my opinion, the Kane Gang really seemed poised to move to the next level. Yet it took several years, but then you guys broke up. Do you look back now and wish you had persevered, or do you think the group ended at the right time?
Well, it ended at the right time for the circumstances, but I think with a better direction, and I personally think more involved management, we might have had a perspective on the thing to say, stick with it, guys, write a new batch of songs, give yourselves a year or something, just take the heat off. But we were left on our own, and it was just like a crazy hothouse. We didn't know what to do.
Yeah, we're in a position where Capitol weren't really financing the recording.
No, they just licensed to release it.
They had a licensing deal, and it was London Records who were the main guys, and that was a big problem.
They weren't willing to support us. They were interested in us working with American producers, but they weren't willing to hand the reins over to Capitol to organize that. So everything happened in a very slow thing. We were talking about Bernard Edwards once, and all kinds of different people, and then it became like, oh well, he's busy for 6 months. We can't wait that long. And then all of a sudden it's 6 months later, and we've still got nobody. So we just felt a bit lost, cast adrift.
Yeah.
We were still trying to write and work and things. And
we were sort of writing for the next album. We more or less finished demoing it. That was a really low point for myself.
All of us?
All of us, because it was in a...
None of us thought it was a great time, because we could hear what our record company was wanting to release, and we had nothing like that. We just thought, I don't know, they could make Bananarama make a record like that, but they couldn't make us make a record like that. And I think we knew that it wasn't going to work. What if we'd had a more active kind of input from management, we might have been able to get onto a record label that was willing to support us.
Yeah, I think we should have done that instead of just soldiering on.
The future's custom made. AUTOLEISURELand. You can drive it away today. Soon, all highways will lead to AUTOLEISURELand.
What inspired you to form AUTOLEISURELAND? I mean, do you ever consider reuniting the Kane Gang, or even releasing the new album under the name the Kane Gang, or was that never part of the plan?
We understand that the Kane Gang is the three of us.
It's got to have Martin.
It's got to have. It's like it needs the three
voices,
wheels.
Two voices. A unique selling point, really, of it.
We are talking about kind of doing a redux version of our very first Kane Gang single with the three of us at the moment, but we haven't really got very far other than talking about it. Just to prove that we're still in communication. Martin's really supportive of our album. He really likes it.
Yeah, but funnily enough, I mean, the genesis, or the beginnings of AUTOLEISURELAND, what happened was their old school, Dave and Martin's old school, this would be about 2015?
14.
Was closing, was moving.
They were doing a fundraiser before they demolished the old school.
And so that school was particularly well known for the amount of musicians it had. There's quite a few musicians gone on to do various things, you know, not massive, but and there was loads of bands floating around in a little scene, and I used to go get in with my phone. We sort of like I was going out with a girl there at the time in Putin, and I'd sneak in and watch all these bands perform, and they were going to do that again. So we went in and picked up.
Yeah, we did our first 4 singles, I think.
Yeah.
We did, where they had a pickup band who were really good.
Yeah.
Did our first 4 singles for a small audience of ex-pupils, you know, all our age group.
Yeah.
That came along, and it was good fun to get back together. And we did Small Town Grade, and we couldn't figure out how to finish it. It was good to get back together.
And so we sort of talked about it. It had raised its head about 3 of us doing it. And Mark, did Mark want to do sort of get on these 80s?
No, I think I was more keen on that.
Was it
but,
you? And
yeah,
which I didn't like the sound of. And
I'd play anywhere at the time because I was just doing gigs all week long.
That's what you do.
That's what I do. Yeah. So we talked about doing some live stuff. It's still on the table, but we do, you know, when you're doing something else, when you're in the middle of a project, you can't really think about that. So that's kind of where we are at the moment.
Yeah. So what happened was, anyway, Martin sort of was managing an act at the time and just signed a major deal with a band called Vant.
Oh yeah, good band. Vant.
So he was getting torn 2 ways really, and that's where his living was, you know.
Yeah.
And that was about the time his songwriting sort of wound down as well, because
I hadn't written anything specific for such a long time. About 2016, so it'd be a year or 2 after that, like Brief Reunion that we did, I wrote some, I would call them songs, but with very partial lyrics, because I always relied on the guys to do the lyrics. And I made an instrumental album, and strangely enough, it's called AUTOLEISURELAnd.
There's a theme going on there.
So I did
only bright enough to think of one name.
Name all the time. And it was kind of it was a kind of elegiac sort of look back at jazz and funk and pop and rock over my late teens and early 20s, like the kind of the Crusaders and George Benson and that kind of stuff. But I wrote tunes. I didn't want to just play jazz. And I can't play jazz. I'm not a jazz player. But I wanted to write interesting songs that I could play the melodies of.
Yeah, more melodic.
It's just some tunes. So I did it just as a thing. And Paul said I could write some lyrics to that. So
it's gradual, wasn't it? Because what happened was we'd always meet. Like I said, we always met, have a couple of pints at a pub once a week, our local, and we chat about things. And David bring a new mix of guitar instrumentals he was writing, or new tune that he had, and that he was working on in the studio. And so he was giving these every week, probably.
Yeah, just to get some feedback, because I didn't know if I was heading in the right direction.
And I thought, and I really liked them. I thought they were great, because I spot straight away the melodic influence, and I'd see where he was going with it. And it was like a jazzy pop. Yeah. But I started thinking that I'd always sort of written beats. You know, I never stopped writing beats. Yeah. I'd sit on the guitar and I'd play, you know, get a song together or whatever. And so when he was playing these, and they were like earworms, and I was starting to think, all right, and sometimes he'd have a title, the song would be the chorus that he'd already chosen. And so I'd work around that and write the lyrics for that. And it just came together really quickly, didn't it?
It did, yeah. We did. We started, the first original one that we did was called AUTOLEISURELAnd, that Paul had written just based on that title and that band name. Quickly had to think about withdrawing my instrumental album and getting it off the internet entirely to stop confusion. So I did that.
So that's why you can't get it now, because AUTOLEISURELAnd, you know, go to the wrong place.
It was like when Chick Corea did an album called Return to Forever, and then he had a band called Return to Forever a year later. It was the same confusion where people come in, I want to return for it. This is not the one I asked for.
When you started putting the album together, is there a song or an aha moment that you realized, yeah, this is going to work? Would that have been? Yeah.
That was that song. Yeah.
Okay.
That's give us the whole direction.
It was the first one written from scratch rather than based on one of my existing tunes. It
Mhm.
was written completely from scratch with the two of us. And as soon as I started recording it, I thought, there's something in this. And then as soon as Paul put his vocal on, I thought, yeah, we've got it. We've got it.
Yeah.
This is going to
Okay.
work.
Okay.
And we can move in different directions from it.
But that's where
But
I'll
this is it.
Take a ride down Infinity Drive. Take a ride down Infinity Drive. Drive round and round in circles, round and round in circles. Let's take a ride down Infinity Drive. Take a ride down Infinity Drive.
I think I quickly realised that we had I had the title before anything because I was driving around Sunderland. I was popping from one shop to another or something, and I drove past a thing called a street called Infinity Drive,
Mhm.
and I just thought, what a stupid name for a street. It sounds like it could either be a Grateful Dead track, or it could be like the most doomy electronic synth.
Yeah, like a big techno
Yeah.
thing.
Right.
You know, Infinity Drive. Where's this road? I mean, it's a road going nowhere, you know. It's
Yeah.
a road linked to infinity. That's
Yeah.
pretty good.
Yeah.
So, and that quickly became the next part of, so you had Leisureland, Motortown, and then
Infinity Drive.
Infinity Drive was like where we are now, because
Right.
the big thing is after Brexit, that Nissan was under threat and they were thinking about pulling out of the UK.
Yeah.
So obviously the levies, trade levies were going too expensive. They could still do that. So it was like, here we go again, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tory governments, whoops,
Yeah.
pull the
Same
rug
thing.
from under your feet,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
They gave us it and then they take it away.
yeah, and so that was a sort of theme, but it was also while we were starting to write, there was like that sort of sophisticated production going on, thinking about it all the time. That was starting up again. So we were sort of
Yeah, I had a
Continuation.
simple idea of having two guitars, bass, and drums, maybe a keyboard. But as soon as we tried a keyboard, I thought, oh, that sounds good. Maybe we should do this. Maybe we should do that. And it ended up as a full production.
Yeah.
Because we arrange as we go sometimes, and we sometimes leave something for a couple of weeks and go back to it and say, well, that bit worked, so let's develop that, rather than just do a rash idea and finish it and then think, I don't like it.
Yeah.
We really work at it, chip away like a sculptor. We do little bits at a time.
Yeah.
But typically the song itself is always done and it's always solid. I'm talking about making the record is the key thing to make that quality happen.
Yeah.
Well, I've been a Kane Gang fan for 39 years now. Whenever the first album came out in the US, and I have to honestly admit that I think Infinity Drive is the most consistent and best album of your career. While recording the album, did you ever think about how a longtime Kane Gang fan would react after 35 years? Was there kind of an internal pressure at all, or you just went along with recording this?
No, I think the main concern was, are they going to get to hear about it? Because it's such a hard job with everything being online. There's so much competition with all these other releases and all kinds of stuff. Yeah. It's just to get people to hear about things and then listen to it. There's another thing.
I think we were so wrapped up in what we were doing with it that we never really thought about how we did receive, did we?
We just thought if we like it,
if we like
we're
it,
happy.
That's it.
Yeah.
We were doing it for ourselves, really.
Yeah.
We never thought like, oh, we should make it funkier or whatever.
No, we didn't follow anything.
It was sort of a reaction against that because I was very wary of doing real soul tracks because without me and Martin singing on it, and I didn't want to veer into Kane Gang territory. And, be the Kane Gang. So we were sort of very concerned about that, but there are elements in it,
Yeah, we can't help put our fingerprints on it.
I mean, that's why
Yeah.
Martin was a big fan of it, because obviously,
Yeah, we thought-
have the same influence, and he just
Yeah,
went,
yeah.
"Wow," you know.
I didn't want to send Martin the album until it was finished.
Yeah,
Although I told him we were doing it. But if he hadn't liked it, I would have really lost my confidence in it, because as you
Yeah.
know, he knows what we do, you know, and if we with the mark, he would have had to tell us.
yeah,
I like to make music that I like to listen to, and it's a cross between all kinds of soul and even disco and modern dance and the Steely Dan type of thing, but like also the Doobie Brothers.
it's not Michael McDonald.
Bits and pieces of everything. In fact, I was avoiding a commercial break last night, flicking through the video channel on TV, and Marshall Hayne were on doing Dancing in the City. And I thought,
right,
that's really good. And straight after that was Taste of Honey doing Boogie Oogie Oogie. And I thought, I just want to be in the middle of those two records.
KC and the Sunshine Band. Don't you know he's my boogie man? KC and the Sunshine Band. Calling, calling, calling.
KC and the Sunshine Band, which has a completely different feel, but it's just as infectious. What can you tell us about that track?
I'll have to own up completely. This goes back to the 90s, and I'm a prolific dreamer. I have very unusual and sometimes vivid dreams. Can't always remember them, but we used to have a floating nightclub in Newcastle on the river, a big old ferry ship done out as two discos. And in the dream, I went on board, and the people I used to work with were saying, "Have you heard this record? It's #1." And it was Donald Fagen singing a song called KC and the Sunshine Band. And I heard the chorus, and that's what you hear on the record is the chorus that I heard in the dream. Paul had to kind of extrapolate from that.
Yeah, I
to get the
try and
verses
get
done.
my head round.
But that's exactly
I mean,
what
that dream was years ago, because
that was the 90s.
every time we were in the pub or something, we'd just come in the chat. I thought, if I was ever going to write another, a song, I'd have to have one of them as the title, like KC and the Sunshine Band.
It might be
And Leisureland,
almost 30 years ago when I had that dream.
Yeah, and it was,
Absolutely crazy. There was a Kane Gang one. I don't know if we released. It was another dream about Bananarama dancing on a car that was upside down in a ghetto.
You never told us about that.
No, it had like a go-go hip hop kind of beat to it. I couldn't make it happen. I couldn't get it working.
Oh, right.
On the fade out, that sweet sad fade out. We kept on pretending the chorus was never ending. On the fade out, that sweet sad fade out. The fat lady, she's still singing, but the sound is getting thinner. On the fade out.
But if you were going to make a mixtape and feature a few Leisureland songs, what other artists would you put on that mixtape?
Or sort of generally, all past, present, everything.
Anything.
Right. Well, we did a little mixtape on Spotify, and I sort of abandoned it halfway through. I'm going to finish it with every track from the album, with sort of contemporary artists who were pressing our buttons at the time and influencing us while we were doing it. So we had Poolside. What else do we have? We had Nelly Vidma, who's a French disco. Again, music. I mean, my wife thought I was off my rocker watching Emily in Paris, but I was listening to the music because the music's great, and it's all French disco and very clever, Again, they're using the same technique of selling the program to people,
right.
It's like a subliminal advertising.
Yeah.
So there'd be a bit of that, bit of air maybe. Who else? And then you go back to our contemporaries. So it'd be PREFAB SPROUT, Blue Nile, definitely Blue Nile.
Definitely, yeah.
The Blue Nile were a huge influence on me, and I think
Sometimes I hear a track like Talk or something like that, and I think, I really like that.
Yeah.
I've never really got into it at the time.
Yeah, it was really weird because a lot of the artists, apart from say the Blue Nile and the people we knew, like PREFAB SPROUT and obviously the big one, Scritty.
Yeah.
You know, there was some that escaped our attention because you're too busy working.
Yeah, too busy working. You miss a lot of things.
You missed a few things.
Japan?
So without Japan, well, we've always been Japan.
I always thought they were
So
interesting.
yeah, Japan. A little bit of the Associates.
Yeah.
A
lot of good post-punk stuff was around at the time. But again, we were getting off the ground ourselves, so we didn't go and see a lot of them. China Crisis.
Yeah.
Big fan, I'm a big fan of them.
Yeah.
They're proper, I would say, proper contemporaries of ours, aren't they? Kind of having similar outlooks.
Together.
I've got tickets to see them at the end of the year.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I saw them a couple of years ago, Dave.
Yeah, we went down. They did a seaside live thing on the beach, which was fantastic.
Yeah, they were really
in
good.
the summer a few years ago.
And they had that sort of feel to them as well.
Yeah. There's something unique and interesting about them, and I think if any band or any artist's got something like that, if you can latch onto it, you're gonna like them, and you're gonna like the next one and the next song. I don't like people who just seem to turn up and recite other people's lyrics and like a typical pop thing. I've got this.
No, I mean, what else?
What else are we listening to?
We're listening to.
Oh,
go on, you show that.
No, go ahead, David.
A poster for the very first, I believe to be the very first Kane Gang
Well, it
gig,
was,
Oh, wow.
in a cellar underneath a casino in Newcastle with an audience of about 20.
3 of us with a rhythm machine.
On Graham as well, wasn't it?
Oh, Graham did.
Yeah,
Was Graham there?
Graham did percussion or something.
Oh, of course he did. Yeah.
Wow.
So
And-
Keith did knock this poster up for the wall. I managed to grab one.
There is a price. Admission normally 50p.
50 pence.
Was it 82 or 83?
I'll be 82.
82,
Okay.
Yeah, would be, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
82.
I'm pleased I got that. Paul said, you've got that old poster on the wall. And I'll walk past it every day in my studio, and I never look at it because it's always there, and I never noticed.
Yeah.
But I thought, well, that's these days that's got a lot more importance to it than it had when I first brought it home.
Well, that's it. I'd like to thank my guests, Paul Woods and David Brewis from AUTOLEISURELAND, for stopping by the Blanket Fort and discussing the new album and so much more. Infinity Drive is certainly one of the best albums of the year, definitely, and I am not blowing smoke up their portholes. This is an amazing album, my friends. So please, all three of us would like to thank all of you for watching, and we'll see you next time on Beach Blanket Fort Bingo. Thank you, David. Thank you, Paul, and goodbye, everybody.
8 tracks and 6 lanes heading our way.